Hello and welcome to Be Indie Now, a podcast about independent game development. I'm your host, Tobiah Marks, and with me today is Hannah McGill. So you're a freelance UI artist, right?
Yes, I am.
So how did you get into that?
Well, I got into it, basically, I started out as an illustrator, and I moved into print design during college, and then I did a lot of
So what brought you to print design?
print design.
Yeah, why did you choose print design out of all the different kinds of artistic fields?
Print design is just really interesting. There's a lot of math involved because you have to gauge for, how is a box going to fold up. You have to measure the sides. You have to put it together at the end, and it all has to measure up, or else, your box is going to fall apart.
So this isn't just like making stuff that will be printed.
Mm-hmm.
This is actually thinking about it in three-dimensional space and how it's going to work.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Like, there's a lot of work that goes into something even as simple as, like, a cereal box.
Mm-hmm.
I've personally worked on, like, food labels and, like, children's media, stuff like that. There's just a whole lot that goes into it. Like, you have to choose the paper type. You have to choose the paper finish. You have to choose the inks. You have to choose the the foil plates and the glitter plates that go on top. You have to communicate with the factories, and you have to do all kinds of stuff that you wouldn't ever think goes into making this thing that you're just going to throw away at the end.
So are you like a design in the whole process too, where do you just do all that pre-planning or do you actually follow up and like get the samples from the factory and make sure they're actually doing what they say they do?
Oh yeah. You have to get samples. Like you have to get paper samples. You have to get how are they printing the foil? What color foil do you want? Like they sell these like ink books that are called Pantone ink books,
Mm-hmm.
and they're $250 a pop.
Yeah, they're ridiculous.
Yeah.
I had to borrow them because I've only done a little bit of merchandising for my stuff, and it's just like I look at it and like, but this looks like the computer. Why did I need this? And it's just like, oh wait, it's slightly different.
Yeah, like I mean, when you're translating from digital to the physical world, there's a lot of stuff that can go wrong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I think for us, like we printed T-shirts, and we had two colors on the shirts. They were both shades of yellow, and based on the color that was underneath, they printed out different than how we wanted them, and one was a bit darker. And it's like, well, like we needed to print like a sample shirt first, and like that whole process was so confusing to us. Like, I guess that makes sense of why you have that full-time position for that. Where do you think about getting like a freelancing type position, being hired by people, like design us a single T-shirt, or is this more of a steady, stable job where you work for greeting card company X and they do all their printing work?
Well, I mean, it sort of depends because, like, I mean, sometimes I am on more I guess you'd call it front end of it, just doing nothing but the graphics and then shipping it out, and somebody else handles the mechanical parts. Sometimes I have to do all of it, like, all at once from beginning to end, But, yeah, like, I mean, just there's some pretty funny stories about things that go wrong because, like, especially with embroidery or something like that, you have to specify the number of ink, like the thread that you're using, like the Pantone color. Pantone can apply to ink or thread or just about anything pretty much. Like one time we ordered this shirt and it had like this globe logo on it, and when the shirts came in, the planet was basically just an ocean of blood because they had used red thread instead of blue.
Oh,
So
wow.
it was just like,
That's just like straight up wrong.
yeah, and it's like one typo can make a huge difference. So you have to be really careful and really kind of obsessive about little details.
Yeah.
And part of that appeals to me, and part of it's very stressful. So
So that's like in college, that's what you decided you wanted to do for your major.
yeah.
Did you graduate with a degree doing that, or did you switch to graphic illustration before?
Well, I mean, they were all graphic design degrees because it was a very small department, very, very tiny.
So it's one degree umbrella that incorporates, all
Yeah,
the stuff that we
and-
think of.
Yeah,
as
and
traditional.
you can say like, I specialize in illustration, but my degree is graphic design. That's actually what I did, but mine was very, very specifically illustration in regards to package design. So, illustration, how it incorporates typography, how it uses grid systems, how it breaks grid systems, which is very interesting. And, just basically making appealing illustrations that make people, want to buy something or look at it or, just be really involved with the product, just making that connection.
So where did you go to school again?
I went to school at Oklahoma State University. I graduated in 2009.
Same year as me.
Cool. Yeah, I really liked it. It was not a traditional art school at all. It was a traditional school, I guess you would call it. You know, it had a huge football team. The art department was very small. It's very, I don't know. I got along really well with my professors, but I felt really bad for people who didn't get along with the professors because they were the only ones.
How big was your department in number of people? Like, we're talking
3.
3 artists. Wow. I was like going to guess like 40 or
No,
something.
3.
Like, 3.
Well, three professors. I mean, there were 3 professors.
Oh, great. I was gonna say, how many
But
students
yeah.
is that? It's like 40 students, 100 students
They would let in 15 every
year? Or
every semester.
Oh, okay.
So, you know.
So that's a decent size.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah.
Enough that the professors have, talked with you at least, if they don't necessarily know your name.
Oh, yeah. But my professors knew me, of course. But
That's always good.
yeah, like, I had a really good time. And, like, one of the professors there really inspired a love of typography in me that I'd never considered prior to, going there. I didn't know that there was an art to making a paragraph. And you can make a paragraph look really, really awesome if you know how.
Yeah, that's always a cool field. I love
Yeah.
going to typography talks and lectures because it's just so interesting how it's everywhere and you see it more so than even art because we read a lot more than we look at cool visual things. But yet it's still a visual storytelling medium, even if it's words.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Like, I mean, even in comics, like, you'd think that, the art makes a big difference in, like, making a comic. But what's actually happening is people are looking at the letters and they're subconsciously reading the imagery. So that's why, you can have really crude comics, but you're really into them because, the layout is nice or the typography lets you read the bubbles unobtrusively. Just, concepts like that are totally fascinating. So, yeah.
Very cool. So after you graduated, what did you do? You started working in a print industry somewhere?
Yeah, I worked at a multimedia kind of illustration job. I worked for New Mexico State University. I was their illustrator, and we would get little clients that come in, like little jobs, But they were really awesome jobs. So I did a lot of stuff for like SNAP Ed, which is like the food stamps program out there. And yeah, we would do print media that incorporated illustrations to teach illiterate people how to cook and use their food stamps wisely. So like we came up with this curriculum that like it would allow people to feed their entire families on food stamp budget with money left over. And that was really awesome. Like, just being able to draw pictures, and even someone like a kindergartner could pick this packet up and learn how to cook from it without reading.
Oh, that's really exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm often talking to indie developers about like you need to use as few of words as possible in your games.
Oh, yeah.
'Cause it's not just like people hate reading. Like, yes, people can read. Yes, you can have a game that's, some hardcore audience. You're, definitely going to target people, who are above 35. These should be people who are literate. It's like, no, they're literate. They just don't want to read your stuff. You got to make it easy to understand without having to know that word. You can have the word there too, but shouldn't be required.
Oh, man. Yeah, like, I would run into writers like that all the time. They're just like, oh, everyone's going to sink into my Victorian novel. I'm like, no.
Yeah.
No,
you start your
sorry.
game, it's like, wait. You have to get through 3 paragraphs first. You have to understand the story. You have to know why this guy's here. It's like, wait, do I really need to know why the guy's there? Isn't there just, like, a puzzle? I could just, like, go in and solve that. It's just there a dude. He's shooting at me. I'll shoot back. I mean, I'm all about story. Don't get me wrong. I love story. But storytelling isn't necessarily exposition, right? And that's one of the problems with games. But going back towards like UI stuff, being able to do it in multiple languages, be able to have something that's understandable, language independent is one of the big advantages of not having words.
Oh, yeah. Like, I mean, UI is storytelling. Even if that story is just, what does this button do?
So when you're doing any kind of UI or print stuff, what kind of considerations you make for people of different languages? Is it pretty much if it doesn't have an English word, it's universal, or other considerations you have to put in? Like I know some languages read right to left as opposed to left to right, and that's kind of a major fundamental change. But I don't know, like how common is that? Actually, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, like the only language that I've personally worked with besides English is Spanish.
Which is pretty similar
Yeah,
to
it's
English.
a similar layout. So I don't really know anything about, the right to left layouts at all. But I do know that when you have this language barrier problem, that's where icons come in really handy. And that's why icons are such a big deal for UI.
You know about the Noun Project?
What's the noun?
Oh, there's this amazing website. You're going to love it. It's called the Noun Project. I think I want to say it's nounproject.org. It's a collection of nouns. So there are small vector images, nounproject.com, that you can get for, a picture of a dog, picture of a house, picture of, a sink. And they're just, that noun in an icon. And you can use them for free in game because they're all Creative Commons.
Nice. I love Creative Commons. So I really appreciate it when people offer their work up for it. So
Yeah, it helps out the indies.
yeah.
So you're into print, you're working for New Mexico State University, and then you decide, you know what, I don't want to do this print thing anymore.
Well, actually, what happened was I got a print gig out here, and then that suddenly ended. So then I was like, you know what, there's not much more for me to explore. I'm more interested in games anyway, so why not? Initially I was just like, I have all this illustration ability that I'm not using when I do design work usually, because, most design work is moving clip art around and then doing typography, because a lot of licenses, they just sell you clip art and you're not allowed to edit it or anything like that. So you just move it around and then you put type on it, and that's not really illustration. So I was looking for something that let me illustrate as well as design, and UI really appealed to me. It really did, because it's like, here, you have this layout. You have to pay attention to a game design. But
So why games specifically as opposed to, say, applications?
applications, well, I like the escapism of games. I like it lets you be a little more creative and a little more experimental, because if you're wildly experimental with this app that's supposed to, like, say, monitor traffic or something, you could really hurt something in real life, like, unless you're running extensive tests.
You're doing some weird skunk works for your to-do list.
I like apps that interact with real life. Like one of my portfolio pieces is an app that turns finding your friend in a huge crowd into a game. So it sort of augments a real life experience. And it was an idea that was conceptualized by a programmer friend of mine for a hackathon that we ended up not using, but I ended up falling in love with it. So I did this whole UI layout and flowchart and UX.
And this was after you got here and didn't have the print job anymore? And you
yeah.
So
it was
had you made any games before that when you decided to make that decision, or are you just like jumping in?
I did a game jam. I actually did 3 game jams while I was a print designer. And
cool.
Those were always fun. They're great. Like, oh man, like, let's see. I think the first one was an iPhone, second one was an iPad, third one was a Unity browser-based game, which was the most successful one. That one was a little crazy. What happened was I started out on a team of 3, right?
So was this one of those things where the teams were randomly assigned at the jam, or did you go in ahead of time?
No. Well, what they did was they would advertise the game jam, and people would come in, and you could come in as a team if you wanted. That's what I did. I had a programmer buddy that I was like, if he's not there, I'm not there. So we were kind of like buddies. And then this musician joined us at the beginning. And we're like, cool. So we'll have a game. It'll have art assets and it'll have music. That's awesome. So, we were given the idea. It was only for NMSU. It wasn't like a global game jam at all. It was just an NMSU specific game jam. But what happened was they gave us the theme, and we were in a room of I think 40 people. And we just had our little team of 3, and everybody else was sort of congregating around different teams. And they gave us a theme, and this theme was the more you try, the worse you're making the situation.
Ooh, that's actually a good theme.
It's a great theme. And I was instantly like, Samus Aran, okay, in Metroid, every time she crashes, all her upgrades, whenever you find them, they work perfectly.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen in real life. Things are going to be malfunctioning.
Yeah, that thing fell off my ship and flew down this giant chasm. Pick it up. It's fine.
Yeah, whatever. I can totally just morph into a ball.
That might not be the only unrealistic thing to Metroid.
No, it's not. But that's where my concept kind of arose. So I made this concept of you're this little robot and you crash land into this delicate, beautiful ecosystem, but everything's malfunctioning. So you have to stop yourself from destroying it. And so then we ran with that.
It's like Pikmin in kind of a way, right? I guess Pikmin, you're kind of, I don't know, absorbing the scenery, finding pieces. It's less of that dark, destroying the Pikmin's lives.
Yeah, so like everything you do in this game, you're screwing something up. Like you cannot not be bad.
So that sounds like fun. I can see how you got into game development and doing UI stuff. So how did you start? Did you just like start doing your own projects from there, or did you try to get hired as a freelancer right away?
Well, I went through kind of a period of like, whenever you lose your job, it's a little bit frightening and it's a little stressful. And it was the first time that it ever happened to me. So I was just, I went through a period of, oh my gosh, what am I supposed to do? So I did the only thing I knew how to do at that moment and could think about, which was draw dinosaurs. So I drew a bunch of dinosaurs. And I was just like, this will get me productive. It'll make me look like I've been doing stuff, So I drew all those dinosaurs. They're all portraits. So it's like, get to know this T-Rex and he's talking and, stuff like that. And then, I was
like
looking,
cutesy dinosaurs, not like hyper realistic.
They're sort of realistic, but they're more funny. Like, they're not like concept art dinosaurs. you know what I'm talking about. Like, it's going to kill you. No, these are just dinosaurs you look at and you laugh at and you say, hey, it's a dinosaur. So I moved on from there. Like, I was looking at just, what can I do with illustration? Because I'm not really happy with just moving stuff around that somebody else made. Like, I'm not super happy with this kind of deal because it limits my ability to design and it kind of limits my ability to problem solve and think. So I was sort of researching, like, I hear there's a game industry out here, So I looked at that and I started looking at the different positions. And 2D artist positions are very difficult to come by right now. There, a lot of the 2D stuff is getting outsourced.
Yeah, because there's a lot of cheap artists all over the world.
Yeah, and like, anybody can draw a little character or produce an asset from a concept created by somebody else. Like, it's, I don't mean to like talk down about it because you do need skill to do it, but at the same time, you can kind of mindlessly.
Skill takes practice.
Yeah.
And so if some guy, he's charging half the cost of an American designer, but he's getting all of these jobs, his skill is going to go up and he's going to become a better and better contractor.
Yeah, and he can afford to do it.
Yeah, because the cost of living is so much smaller over there. I mean, like, if he's charging half the cost of an American designer, he might still be getting more than any other graphic artist would get in that country otherwise. So he's getting a top tier salary for his country. It's just less than the average salary of an American because our cost of living is so much higher.
Yeah, exactly. So, there's that problem. So I looked into it and I was just like, what is a job where, I could make myself valuable by thinking and managing and planning. And, suddenly I met this UI designer at a sketch meetup that I go to. And she was just like, dude, just make this kind of thing. Make buttons, make layouts, make icons, make yourself look like you're a video game designer. And, ever since I've just been making stuff that makes me look like a video game artist. So that was just awesome. Like, I love running into UI artists. They're always so passionate about it. And it gets a lot of flack.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that, like, it's like sound, where too many people say, oh, I'll just throw it in at the end. And it's like, oh, I finished my game. Now I'll throw together a UI and then this will work, right? And all these half-finished buttons, they're in weird places. And, part of it is just not just the UI, right? It's that whole user experience, the UX of how they interact with it. What kind of tactile sensations do they have when a button is pressed? It isn't just the fact that it changes color. Does it light up? Is there sound? Does it feel like something's happening versus not? And that has to be worked closely with the programmers too. It's not just here's some images, throw them in, and it works.
Ugh.
Do you run into that all the time? Those
Oh.
people are just like, yeah, make this pretty.
Oh man, yeah, like, and the thing is, people say make it good, and it's like, what does that mean? And they're like, make it clean, and I'm like, what does that mean?
Yeah, so like, is that be like cleaning up what they already got? Like, I mean, actually, that's a good question. Like, when you have worked with people before, do you get like bad UI and they're like, fix this, or do you kind of come in earlier in the process where they're like, we don't know what our UI should look like in the first place?
Well, mostly I've been doing illustration type stuff as freelance, just for clarification. But I have done a few icons and things like that. Usually, there's one type of client who will say, "We already have this UI. Can you copy this style, but make new assets?" And I'm like, "Sure. Just show me the style." And what really helps is having a style guide handy. Style guides are like this little design Bible that you put together that labels, what colors you're using, what font you've got, what, typeface, family, all that stuff. So, like, you have to have this thing, or else you're not going to be able to communicate to somebody, what you're trying to accomplish if, say, your designer leaves halfway through the job.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point. I actually don't see a whole lot of indies making the trouble. I see a lot of, character sheets, and a lot of character artists will think about defining out their character and doing all the T poses. But then when it comes to the UI, they're just like, whatevers.
Like, I mean, I don't really understand the obsession with characters. Sorry. Like, it's just more interesting for me to look at the surroundings because that's what pulls the game together.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, you're looking at the surroundings and the illustrations and the covers and the menus a lot more than you are anything else in the game.
Yeah.
Except maybe like a visual novel, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's always exceptions whenever you talk about that, right? So how many, have you been getting a bunch of clients? Have you, been doing just a selected few as you build up your portfolio pieces?
Well, I get a lot of inquiries, and I go through a lot of talks. I would say that most stuff falls through. That's just kind of the nature of it.
Yeah,
And,
most people will fall through it, absolutely.
Oh, yeah. Like, especially if they're like, I want 4 illustrations for $25. And I'm like, no.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
You'll run into a lot of those people.
But a lot of them just don't understand that they have to be involved with the process. They have to actually talk to me because there's no hive mind of something that looks good. We have to find something that's appropriate rather than good. So, like, you think of it in terms of appropriateness versus inappropriateness. Like, you wouldn't put, blood and guts and gore in a little kid's game unless you're just kind of making a joke or something.
Then it wouldn't be a kid's game anymore.
Yeah, then it's really not a kid's game. Then it's a parody of a kid's game.
Yeah.
So it's about finding the appropriate solution. So I always try to use, like, neutral language, try to guide people towards very neutral language. There's no good and bad. We have to find, what's going to appeal to the player, because the player is the ultimate person who's going to, buy this game. They're going to play it and enjoy it. So we have to figure out what they like.
Yeah, so you have to know who the player is.
Yeah.
Again, something else that indie developers need to think about.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, everybody. And it's like, not everybody. First off, it's people who have this device. That's only a certain amount of people in the world. And then you want everyone to use it, but you have to think about, okay, how would it be appealing to this kind of player versus that kind of player? And you kind of have to subcategorize, even if you're going to go for every single subcategory.
Yeah, I'd love to see someone try that.
So how do you meet your clients? How do you getting people to contact you? You just go out and meet them like face-to-face at meetups, or using online at all?
Usually face-to-face is a lot better. Online, it's easier for them to flake out. So I usually try to meet people face-to-face, establish a really good connection with them. And I trawl meetup.com. That's my number one thing. There's so much going on in this.
Yeah, every day of the week you go to a cool new meet. I mean, I guess I'm lucky. Like, we're both in the Northern California, San Francisco Bay Area, which is just trimming with developers. So many.
Like, oh my God! Like, there is, you know that moment is like, it's full of stars.
Yeah.
It's full of devs.
I mean, like, there's development communities probably in every major city, but like here, the difference is that there's a meetup every single night, for something.
And, like, they're Shark Tanks. Like, there's tons of people there. People are starting their stuff. They're throwing portfolios at everybody.
Yeah, I mean, there's also like Shark Tanks in other sense of the world. Just like there's people out there who are predators, just trying to prey on people who don't necessarily know what's going on and can
Oh.
exploit, labor and oh, I'm gonna hire you for cheap. And you got to watch out those like investor type funding
Oh my
people,
gosh.
buyout contracts. You got to really think about that stuff before you go in the business of somebody. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
not to scare off everybody too much. You got to meet people, and that's how you find it. But you always
Yeah.
got to watch out for low life people. I don't know.
Well, I mean, to me, like the mark of a really good client is when they're willing to talk about ugly stuff like contracts and rights and
Yeah, I mean, a
stuff
contract
like
should
that.
not be an ugly thing.
Yeah.
I would be totally turned off if they were just like, "Oh, contracts. Who needs this?" Like, no. We need this.
Yeah.
Contracts is good. You should have like 5 on hand that you could just use, right? You're like, oh, let me figure out which one of my contracts would be appropriate, kind of thing. Not like, oh, do I need to bother with this?
Yeah.
Because that's what I like about a service like Odesk or Elance, where they kind of handle a lot of that for you, and it help protects both parties. Because for you as a freelancer, it protects that, all right, you go on and it has this logging hour system. It monitors your computer so that you work 5 hours. You can prove that you worked 5 hours and you weren't just browsing Reddit or whatever. And so then the client has to pay you for all of that. And at the same time, it also protects the client because then, if you charge for 5 hours, you get the proof that they were actually doing that and they didn't just do it in 15 minutes and then bill you for, an extra 4 hours.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know, like for me, when I would write contracts, like I write my own contracts, I use the Graphic Artists Guild handbook to write my contracts, and for me, it's almost a design process in and of itself because every project is so different, and clients want different things, so you have to kind of like modularize it and pick out what's appropriate. Like, does the client want the rights to be able to edit the artwork, for instance? Like that's a really important thing to consider. Like, do you want to be able to edit it and blow it up?
Do you
or
generally
recolor it?
yield all those rights or do you try to retain some of them?
It depends on the project. Like if it's a project where I think the client is going to just distort the images or not understand what they're doing with it, I'm going to keep the rights so that they come back to me so that I can edit it and make sure it looks great. Because when things look great, that makes me look a little better too. Because
Yeah, because your portfolio pieces, right?
So I'm just like, I want it to look really good. There's something in it for me. It's a little self-serving, but
Yeah, self-serving is good.
yeah.
So do you work out of an office, a home office? Where do you usually actually do the work in?
Usually my home office. I mean, I'm on a laptop, so sometimes I go to a nearby coffee shop. Like, there's a coffee shop within walking distance. Well, anywhere in San Francisco.
Yeah.
But in particular, I have a coffee shop that's like, I go out the door and there's a coffee shop, so I can go there, which is really nice.
Yeah, those are always a nice atmosphere,
Yeah.
and it's good to get out of your home workspace and have that kind of different atmosphere while you're working. At least I appreciate that.
Yeah, like, just it's kind of like oblique inspiration where you do something slightly different and then, a new idea comes to you or a solution presents itself that you didn't consider before.
Do you also like the fact of having people around you? Like, does that help at all, or would you rather be alone?
Oh, I would love to be in an environment where I'm surrounded by people and I have a team and I can, connect with other people and, draw from their inspiration, get feedback. With freelance, I'm kind of all by myself, and that's sort of a problem for me.
Well, I mean, is it a problem? Like, do you struggle with being working alone, kind of thing?
Yeah, I do. I really do. Like, I need a third party between me and the client usually. Like, it's really tough just making it something by yourself because you don't have that fresh set of eyes that goes, there's a problem here that it's an obvious problem like a typo or something's just at a weird tangent and you need someone.
So what's been your solution to deal with that?
Just, going out to artist meetups and presenting my portfolio and talking to people and following up.
Doing that
and
peer-reviewed stuff.
Yeah.
Even if it's like retroactively, just to know what other people's thoughts on it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I can learn from it all the time. Like, it's, like, super, super valuable just to have this community out here of artists. Like, I've never seen that before. Just, having this ability to go out and just make a friend, and they happen to be an artist too. Because, like, in New Mexico, that wasn't quite the case, because there's not very many artists out there, like, especially not in the tech industry. If they're artists, they're, like, fine artists at Taos or whatever.
Yeah.
So, there's this community out here that's so valuable. Like, people just love to talk about what they do. Like, the UI people I've met, they are so passionate about it. Like, that's what really sold me on it. Like, if I hadn't met those particular people and they're like, we love UI, I wouldn't be doing UI myself.
It's like they're so passionate that passion rubs off on you.
Yeah. So now I'm just like, UI is awesome, you guys.
Cool. That's a really great way to get into a new industry.
Yeah.
So, like, speaking of like work set and everything, you said you use a laptop. What kind of equipment do you use? Do you have a tablet pen? Do you ever like pull out pencils and paper, move things around? Like, do you all digital?
Yeah, I usually do like my illustrations in pencil first. I just like the tactile aspect to it. Like, you can't really duplicate that on a computer. It's too smooth. Like, I like having tooth.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen like a lot of people take pieces of paper and strap them to their tablets. It's like it's a little bit of a rough feel with the pen, but it's not quite the same.
Yeah, it's not quite the same. Plus, I pressed down so hard that I'd rip the paper. So, I do use a tablet when I just need something really fast that I need to edit in Photoshop. Like, I'd love to have a Cintiq someday, but right now I just have an Intuos. It's like lap-sized. It's pretty awesome. Like, I like the touchpad sensitivity, even though it confuses me a little bit sometimes.
Yeah, I have an Intuos. It's served me for years. I think it's like an Intuos 2 or something. I think I got it when it was new. That's very, very old at this point, but it's awesome. I still like let people borrow it whenever they need a tablet because I'm not that great at drawing, but it's so much easier to work with that whenever you're doing any kind of Photoshop manipulation because the mouse is just too slow and too precise, right? You kind of need that bit of loose flowing if you're doing anything remotely artistic or drawing.
Yeah, and like sometimes I just use it for, regular computer functions like, browsing the internet because it's easier for me to point with a stylus.
Yeah, exactly. It's very useful.
Yeah, it's a lot more intuitive.
So what advice would you give someone who wants to hire a freelancer like yourself? Like, when should they get involved in the process?
Well, my advice would be,
Like, is earlier better, or should they come with a more finished idea of what they're looking for?
Oh, finished idea.
Yeah.
Unless you're wanting the freelancer's help with the overall design of the product, you should either be open to collaboration or have everything planned out and, sorted right away.
How much granular detail do you need? Like, I want an artist set this size with this style guide and this many pixels. Like, is that good or is that too specific?
Oh, that's very specific is great. Like, it makes my life a lot easier. And, sometimes sometimes a freelancer will ask questions like, what do you want it to look like? Because that's part of their job. They need to know. And it's not just they come up with whatever unless you specify like your personal style. So, I mean, it's really important to specify, what styles you're into. And it's also like helpful to look at a freelancer's portfolio to kind of get an idea of what they're comfortable making. Because I've gotten some pretty out of the blue requests that, I was just like, no, because it was just kind of like, what is this? Why are you asking me to draw this? You know?
Just something well outside your range of what you're used to. Which is something about having a diverse portfolio because, if you want to do UI and you don't have UI in your portfolio, you're probably not going to get offered UI jobs.
Yeah, so I mean that's what I'm working on right now because like right now my personal portfolio is freelance oriented. It has a huge variety of stuff because I can put on lots of different hats. But I do have a very specific UI portfolio that I send out to interested parties. And that's what I say, please look at this. My website that's public is freelance, kind of just I'm doing cool things and, outside of UI. But I do have a UI specific portfolio. So you do have to kind of segregate.
So, do you think going to meetups is a good way to start? Because, my experience whenever I've done freelancers is I go online. So, I'm one of those people
really?
that I've hired a lot of people outside the country because, hey, they offer cheap rates and they do really good work, right? And I've never really, what I know there's a lot of advantages to working in person, but what motivation for me to go out to meetups, find that artist, why should I go out there to hire them versus just a couple clicks, finding a portfolio and being done with it? Right? I don't mean as like a hostile question, right? I mean, it's honestly, what's as a client, what's the advantage of either one?
Well, there's an advantage to shopping around online. But the thing is, it's still somewhat anonymous. So it's going to be a lot harder for you to build up a relationship with an artist who can just fall off the face of the planet whenever they want. Like, it's, I know that there's protections, for payment and stuff like that. But I'm talking about, like, for the long term, when you're setting up a business relationship with someone.
You want to hire someone more than just this week.
Yeah. More than just this one particular project and then I'm never going to see them again. Like, if you want an artist who's going to be like your partner, who's going to be that dependable person, it's a whole lot better to meet them in person and work with them in person, because the internet just lets people be anonymous. And, if you don't want that anonymity, that's when you go out and you seek someone in person.
Makes sense.
Yeah, so... that's how you make friends too. So
yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's always really inspiring to go to meetups and meet other people genuinely interested in your work. Like,
oh yeah.
It's just a fun experience.
Yeah, and like even stuff like conventions. Like conventions are also good, by the way. It is such
Everyone listening to this podcast should go to San Francisco and go to the Game Developers Conference.
Oh yeah.
It's just a given. Like, yeah, I know it costs money and not everyone can. But if you can, you should.
Yeah, like definitely, because like and I can also go to like art conventions and indie conventions like Alternative Press Expo, and even I tried an anime convention the other day. I'm still kind of half and half whether I want to do an anime convention ever again. But
it depends on the anime convention.
Yeah,
there could be a variety of quality levels and how much artists are respected and.
Yeah. I've been treated very well at conventions, actually, and it's such a difference seeing someone's eyes light up and seeing them being actively engaged in your work and wanting to get a photograph with you. There's a huge difference between that and someone just hitting favorites.
I saw it on DeviantArt.
Yeah. Like.
Oh, even they have likes on DeviantArt?
They have favorites.
Yeah,
and then
sense.
Tumblr has likes.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So, I try to do both. I try to rock both. But, I sometimes when I focus on one, I can't focus on the other. So,
yeah, definitely. It's all about hours of the day, right? Because you're spending all this time marketing yourself. Then you don't have enough time to draw or work, right?
Yeah. And unfortunately, you have to have drawings in your Tumblr or else you'll lose followers. It's just a thing.
So, how long have you been freelancing at this point?
7 months.
All right. So,
yeah.
7 months. I got a time machine, hop in it, go into 7 months ago. You have to talk to yourself. You got 30 seconds.
Jeez. Just do UI now. Don't go
yell,
through.
UI.
Yeah, just do it now. It's way more fun. There's data that backs it up. People can't just say, I hate it and disregard you forever. Like you have to pay attention to metrics and math and usability.
So it was like the 7 months ago, you were just not thinking of that stuff?
Yeah, like I had to learn about it. Like, and UI had always been described to me as this repulsive thing that only, half-baked illustrators did. And it's like, no, it's not.
Oh, really?
It's
I'm surprised that you got such a negative bias. I haven't heard that.
Well, it's not like people are going, no, don't do UI. It's more like, I don't want to do UI.
Is that mostly like print illustrators having that kind of attitude, do you think? Or maybe you just ran into certain ones with those attitudes.
It was just kind of like, it wasn't something they liked to do. Yeah. And you can't fall in love with something if the people you're around don't like it as well. And, it's just kind of like, that was sort of my roadblock. I was just like,
you have to surround yourself with people who are into your thing. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And, like, they have amazing skills. Like, I am super jealous of their skills, their experience, their passion. But, if someone just doesn't like UI and they say, it's a button, who cares? And it's like, oh, well, that's kind of the attitude you end up adopting. But it's really an unsung hero. It's like this chimera skill of game design and typography and illustration. Like, you have to be good at all three to be good at UI. So, yeah, that's just my feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. The more skills you can know, the better you're going to be at that. So you also knowing that technical too of how the buttons will work and the design and what makes it work. So speaking of that too, I always encourage people to go out there and play games, right? Because people have the schedules, like, oh, I got to market myself, I got to develop this, and they're like, oh, I don't have time to play games anymore. And it's like, yeah, but you have to play them in order to make them. You have to understand what's out there. You have to know the vernacular, what people are talking about. You have to know what's going on. So what kind of games have you been playing lately, trying to learn more about UI?
Well, in terms of UI, like,
in general, what have you been playing lately?
Like, that's the thing. Like, a bad UI can make a game unplayable, but, I mean, a game can function with, just decent UI. So, like, I wouldn't say that good UI necessarily makes a game more fun. It can definitely make it super accessible.
A bad UI makes a game less fun.
Yes.
Sure. I don't know. I think a good UI can make it more fun. I think like an okay UI can be ignored for other factors, but good UI definitely launches a game above the rest. It's just one of those things that it's not really noticeable. It's like when, I know a lot of animators, and they'll like look at a scene in a movie and be like, "Oh my God, did you see that tearing?" And they're like, "Oh yeah, that was terrible." I'm like, "What are you guys talking about?" And they're like, freeze frame, and like on one frame, one foot of the rabbit goes through the person just for a half a second, and they're like, "Oh, that was terrible." And they're like, "Oh, I didn't notice that," but like my brain did, because I look at that and I'm like, that didn't look very realistic, and then once it's fixed or I see a better version, I'm like, oh, that looked good.
Yeah.
And I couldn't say because, oh, it's because in that frame there, this happened.
Yeah.
Because I don't know that trade very well. I don't know the details. But subconsciously, I knew it wasn't good. Like if you show two UIs, you say which one's better, people can tell which one is the better UI, even if they can't tell you why.
Because, like, I see stuff like that are very simple games, that are like the microtransaction wagons that kind of plague the marketplace right now, but they have good UI.
Yeah, no,
So,
that's one of the core principles of those designs. To make it as easy as possible.
Yeah.
No friction points.
Yeah, so like I'm just hoping that since I'm focused in UI, people that like I don't know. Hopefully, we can edit that out. But let me start over.
All good. So,
Yeah.
what games have you been playing? That's the point of this question.
What games? Yeah. Okay, so like, love to give shout out to indie devs. So I really enjoyed Scurvy Scallywags. It's put out by Ron Gilbert. He's the guy who made Monkey Island and all that stuff. So I love that game because it's match 3, but it has like kind of adventure and cat and mouse elements that are really interesting. And also a level up system.
When did it come out?
I don't know. I think it was like a few months ago.
Actually, I haven't played it. I hadn't even heard of it, so I need to check it out. I love
Yeah.
Ron Gilbert's stuff.
Yeah. It's really adorable. It has kind of Errol Flynn influences, and it's nice. And then the other game is Inkaboto by Dean Carter. Really, really good, like, Metroidvania game that also incorporates, it sort of seems like Super Mario Galaxy a little bit because it has little planets that you explore and they're round, and there's a lot of gravity-based puzzles, which are really fun. It's really nice.
Cool.
Yeah.
Sounds awesome. I'll have to check those out.
Yeah.
I've been playing Papo and Yo.
Papo and Yo.
Yeah, I got it free in the Humble Bundle. And it's one of those games that, like, on paper, I should love this game. Like, I don't want to say bad things about this game because I should have loved every bit of it because it's an indie game and it's, like, super artistic and it's gorgeous, just amazingly gorgeous. It's everything about it is beautiful. It plays beautiful. The controls are beautiful. It has this story. It's very, very heavily story based. It's called Father and I, right? And it's about this kid and kind of dealing with an abusive father by going to this like weird fantasy land, and his father's represented by this monster, and he's got to deal with the monster. But it's just the problem is I didn't have fun with it. It was so well made and it was so much thought into it, but the gameplay was so boring to me because it was go from point A to point B and press a button. And it's like, okay, you go over there, press a button, something cool will happen. You go press a button, something cool will happen. And fair enough. I like those kinds of games. I like visual novels. I like, click and move forward. But then it would get to the point where it's like, okay, I start. I know the solution to the puzzle. There's no challenge. Nothing. It shows me exactly what I need to do. What button I need to hit next is highlighted for me. But now I got to walk 10 seconds, press that button, spend 10 more seconds, walk back, press that button, 10 more seconds, walk back, press this, 10 more seconds, go flip this. Okay, now I can move to the next area. And if it moved a little bit faster, if there was, click, move on, okay, that was a cool mechanic, move on, I'd be more into it. Like in comparison to, say, Brothers, which I have been ranting about so much lately, Brothers, Tale of Two Sons. Have you played that one?
No, not yet. Like, there's so much stuff.
Brothers that's the one where it's 10 out of 10, just amazing. Everything about it is right. It's easy. It's simple. The solutions to the puzzles are obvious from the start, but that's not the point. You're going through it, and it's a magical world every time. Everything you do moves the characters along. You don't stay in one area over and over again, going back and forth and having to do this random jumping puzzle and having to destroy, all 3 frogs. Like, I could have just, done one and moved on, and that was the problem I had with it. But otherwise, it was gorgeous. Every other aspect of the game was amazing, other than the fact that they didn't have fun playing it, which is so sad.
Oh, well, I mean, given the subject matter.
I mean, the subject matter is a whole other thing entirely. There's not a whole lot of games about child abuse, so
Binding of Isaac.
That's why you have to. Yeah, that's not a whole lot. Not that there hadn't been, but there's not a whole lot. So it's not. It should get credit just for that, right?
Yeah.
I would, if you have it, you should play it. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I'd recommend people. I don't know. They probably should pay for it too. It's indies. They just buy it. Go out there and buy it right
just
now.
Buy it.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Thank you very, very much for being on the show. Where can we find more about you?
Well, I have a personal website, which is www.hannahmcgill.com.
That's HANNAHMCGILL.
Yes.
Just in case you know, because there's multiple ways to spell Hannah McGill.
Yeah,
just want to make sure.
It's not like.
You have a Twitter?
Yes, I do. I tweet at Hannahcomb because it's a play on words for honeycomb.
Nice.
My logo is a bee.
Very cool.
Yeah.
If you want to find more about me, you can go to my blog at tobiahmarks.com or go to Twitter at Tobiah Marks. If you want to find out more about the show, you can go to beindynow.com where you get show notes, past episodes, all that cool stuff like that. If you want to ask questions for the show or be a guest on the show, email me show@beindynow.com. Thank you very much, Hannah, for being on the show.
Thank you. I really appreciated coming out here and
go out there and make some games.
Yeah.